Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we need to talk about early voting. Again, I know I've been talking about it a lot, but seriously, guys, let me just close this. Early voting is insane right now. For those of you who want to know, this article was released on October the 17th, so if you're watching this video day of, it is the 18th right now, so yesterday. And, so to give you an idea, we are having stunning record turnout in elections. This is an article by the AP, which, for those of you who don't know, is probably the least biased source you can find. They are very good at just reporting facts. They are a cooperative of the largest news organizations in the United States, and they do a very good job of it. And the fact that they're saying this is pretty insane. The 22.2 million ballots submitted as of Friday represents 16% of all the votes cast in the 2016 presidential election. Even as 8 states are not yet reporting their totals and voters still have more than 2 weeks to cast ballots. Americans' rush to vote is leading election experts to predict that a record 150 million votes may be cast, and turnout rates could be higher than in any election since 1908. Now, I'm going to I need to quantify this for you. In 2016, there were 120 million votes cast. This is 3 million more votes. That is a quarter increase. That is 125% what we had in 2016. And to give you an idea how insane this is, so as of Friday, so 2 days ago, it was 16%. As of the records for what we have yesterday, it is 20%. And in key swing states, as some states haven't reported, but in key swing states, just Texas, it's 43%. Georgia, 34%. South Carolina, 21%. We haven't gotten proper updates from Michigan and Wisconsin for a little bit, but almost 30% in many key Great Lakes states for the election. The all vote by mail states, to give you an idea, some of the states that haven't responded yet are Hawaii, Utah, Oregon, and Washington, and they are all vote by mail. They send everyone a ballot. You are default expected to vote by mail. You choose if you want to vote in person, as opposed to with virtually every other state where you choose to get a mail-in ballot instead of voting in person. And, yeah, it's going to be big, this election. And I'm like I said, I'm going to try and quantify this for you. We'll go back to the AP article in just a sec. But right now, there's about... Democrats are returning about 55% of the ballots. Republicans about 30%, Independents about 20%. If the election holds up as it's going, if these numbers just maintain, that is truly awful for Republicans, because every vote that gets cast for the Democrats, that puts them ahead, because they're running up the score right now, even if every independent breaks towards the Republicans, and it's looking very much like they're not, at the very least we're looking at 50-50 split. Democrats are still winning by 5% in an extreme every independent's a secret Republican scenario. That runs up the score. To give you an idea, in Texas, I still think it's 22% of votes cast are new votes. Those are never in favor of the incumbent, well, rarely favorable to the incumbent, and in this case, are definitely not. And if we assume, I'll use Texas as a good example for why this can be so potent, let's say Texas maintains its weekend rate for the rest of the week, so about 5% increase per day, half of what it was doing during the week. So we assume it's not going to revanche back up there. That means Texas, by election day, would be at about 80% turnout. A little bit higher, but about 80%. And that means the Democrats would have turned, and assuming the ratio is maintained, 55% Democrat, that means Democrats alone would have turned in enough ballots to beat their 2016 turnout totals. That is really bad for the Republicans, because then Democrats are spending a lot of money on getting out the remaining people who they don't normally vote for. I know I've said this before in other videos, but I just really want to emphasize this. The more people you get to vote early is the more people you can afford to get to vote late. So let's go back to the AP article, because really, the fact that right now people are saying, oh, 150 million votes may be cast, president and the largest election in over a century, this very well could destroy the Republican Party. Yeah, so it says Republicans are being outvoted at 2-to-1 ratio in this case, but it's not including independents in that. So I'll use independents as a modifier, but to give you an idea, this is through October 15th. So the Thursday. And already we're seeing the numbers really start to increase in each of the states. The fact this green bar is so visible is unprecedented, because this is total ballots. And at 20% in a state, 40% in a state like Texas, we would expect, if this was a coronavirus thing, then across the board we would see stupidly high turnout. But like California's at about 20%, so Virginia's about 30%, but most of the Northeast is about between 10 and 20%. But the competitive states are seeing much higher turnout, indicating a lot of excitement to vote against Trump. Because that's another thing we need to keep in mind here. If it was a general, Democrats just want to vote early because because they're more aware of coronavirus than Republicans. Once again, I'll pull out my usual 70% of Democrats say they were planning on voting before the election. 40% of Republicans did. So our numbers aren't matching that. Democrats are overperforming slightly, or Republicans are underperforming slightly. But the fact that in key states we are seeing higher turnout than safe states, such like states that are expected to go for the Democratic Party, which are higher than normal, but when you are talking a statistically different percentage, that is awful if you are the guys who need to win these states and you're hoping for low voter turnout. And for the record, this means that we're having about a 2% increase of the total votes counted per day. We are 15 days out from the election. That could mean we're at 50% turnout compared to 2016 by election day. And that's assuming the votes we haven't counted here are going to be low, which I don't think that's going to be the case. So, and there was one other part I wanted to talk about here, which is here. There have been extraordinary lines and hours-long wait times in Georgia, Texas, and North Carolina as they've opened early voting. The delays were largely a result of insufficient resources to handle the surge, something advocates contend is a form of voter suppression, and just to reveal my bias, I also believe it's a form of voter suppression. Republicans argue that the signs of enthusiasm are meaningless. Democratic early voters are people who would have voted anyway, they say, but an AP analysis of the early vote shows 8% of early voters had never cast a ballot before, and 13.8% had voted in half or fewer of the previous elections for which they were eligible. This is where the 22% new voter figure comes from, by the way. And this is why it's a really big deal. Even with copious voter suppression through the at this point, voter ID has kind of hit its peak, and you can't really disenfranchise people as well in most cases, you can't really disenfranchise felons after they're out of prison. So all they're left with is, we're closing down ballot places. ballot boxes and all that jazz. Even with that, North Carolina, 30%, Georgia, 35%, Texas, 43%. That's not just high enthusiasm, that's telling us the Republicans have built a dam. Because all three of these are Republican-controlled states, except for North Carolina, where they've got a Democratic governor. They've built this nice dam, and they're going, well, we've trapped people on the other side of the dam. And despite that, the amount of water going over it is making it so this is the highest turnout early voting election we've seen in these three states. Do not, genuinely, don't take this as sort of a, oh, well, it's early voting and it's going to mellow out. At this point, it's going to be a high turnout election. We just don't know how high of a turnout it's going to be. So with that, all that being said, if you liked the video, drop a like down below and also a comment. If you want to see more from the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you want to see more from me outside of YouTube, I do have a Twitter, at OneManThinkTan01, the Roman numeral, link in the description. Otherwise, as always, have a wonderful day.